You know when the video opens up with a sigh that it's going to be a good one. I hope to goodness gracious that we don't have to go out there and make another video explaining why this video is wrong, because at the time of recording this audio, we still have not had any news on any sort of a signing of this free agent in the NHL. Because when it comes to the new rumors linking Phil Kessel, former Arizona Coyotes player and current guy on the market, to another team in Alberta, it makes for some very interesting discourse amongst Toronto Maple Leaf fans. So, today we're talking about Kessel, and do you really need me to go through the entire rundown? I feel like every time I say, do you really need me to go through the rundown again, I feel like a lot of you might go out there and say, no, we don't. Like, we know what Kessel's about. We know what Patrick Kane's about. We know Monahan got traded. We know about all this stuff. Stop repeating yourself in every video, but like, you know, there's always that part of me that's like, hey, what if this is somebody's first ever video watched here on the channel and they haven't gone through the entire rundown? But like, Phil Kessel's a good NHL player. He's 34 years old, and he has somewhat of a meme status around the NHL because of a few inside jokes amongst fan bases and teams, plus the fact that he is a two-time Stanley Cup champion and a legitimately good hockey player. He still is, at the time of recording this audio, a free agent, and he's been linked to more and more teams as the September period has started to approach. Now, when it comes to what teams have been prevailing the most in these conversations, hey, where is Phil Kessel going to go? It's been the Edmonton Oilers, and we've made a few videos going over Kessel and his link over to Edmonton. The fact that apparently the Oilers' number one plan is Patrick Kane, and how Phil Kessel seems to be a secondary option. However, this video is going over the other Alberta team that apparently might have their sights set on Kessel as well, and this conversation has sparked up a very good nostalgia trip for Toronto Maple Leafs fans as we ask, could Phil Kessel go to the Calgary Flames? The reason we're talking about this is because, firstly, this was a post made on one of the Calgary Flames, forum websites that is shared once in a while on here. This is a user named Yoho who said that I've heard friends at the Saddledome say that Kessel is going to sign a one-year contract with the Flames and Mackenzie Weegar re-ups for 7 years. We'll see if it pans out the way they describe. This also sort of went viral on Twitter. We had a few people going out there and liking this one, not to mention the fact that we saw on Sportsnet 960 an hour of Flames talk with Pat Steinberg and Logan Gordon, where they talk about Evan Rodriguez, Sonny Milano, or Phil Kessel. Who could Calgary still target in free agency? Now, the reason this is huge is because when it comes to the Calgary Flames, they just made themselves a very big splash in free agency already. They signed Nazem Kadri to a 7x7 deal, and that's a guy that was probably going to demand a lot of money in the eyes of most NHL people. And yeah, we're going to talk about Nazem Kadri in the next video as well, going over how this correlates to the JT Miller conversation, but Nazem Kadri is an interesting and noteworthy name, not just because he had a 100-point pace season with the Colorado Avalanche this recent year, but because since 2009-2010 up until 2018-19, he was a cult player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Take a look at his body of work with Toronto ever since getting drafted by that team 7th overall in 2009. He made the Maple Leafs 2 seasons after that, becoming a mainstay guy with the team in 2012-2013. Now, there was a lockout-shortened year in that season, so you could see he actually had some AHL time as well, but Nazem Kadri was a point-per-game player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he maxed out with that team, getting 61 points in 82 games played. He was a feisty, hard-working, agile center who could actually do some pretty good things with the puck. However, what Nazem Kadri was not with the Toronto Maple Leafs was a number one bona fide elite center. This was a problem in the eyes of some Leafs fans because back then, in this time frame, the best player on Toronto happened to be that very same Phil Kessel that in which we just discussed. Phil was drafted 5th overall in 06 by the Boston Bruins, eventually got traded over to Toronto and played from 09-10 all the way to 2014-15 as the best player on that team. He had multiple 80-point years with the Leafs and multiple near 40-goal seasons as well. He was an absolute superstar, and because Toronto is Toronto, and because Phil Kessel is such an intriguing personality, where he's a little bit more harsh, a little bit more on the blunt side, and you don't really want to go out there and piss this guy off, especially when the Toronto media is talking about things like, oh, he eats hot dogs, he's fat, he's lazy, he's this, he's that. Phil Kessel was the whipping boy for the Toronto Maple Leafs media for a number of years, and he was the best player on a team that just lost out on Matt Sundin. Now, Matt Sundin was crazy because he was a number one center, a bona fide elite franchise caliber talent, but he just didn't have a number one winger to play with. Kessel comes over, and he's a number one winger, but he doesn't have a number one center to go along with him. Nazem Kadri, they tried it out, but it wasn't really that great, or at least it wasn't great enough to the point that you could say that this was one of the best pairings in the NHL. But for Nazem Kadri, he really did come into his own with the Colorado Avalanche, getting that 100-point pace year. 87 points in 71 games played, and being a point per game in the postseason, despite dealing with injuries. And now you have yourselves a future that sees Nazem Kadri already working himself up the ladder to being a number one caliber center. He is that now. He wasn't that before, I would say, but he is that today in the eyes of some NHL fans. Phil Kessel, on the other hand, is kind of aging out. He's 34 years old, as we said, and he definitely isn't going to go out there and post another near 40-goal year. I mean, he had 20 goals in 56 games played the previous 2020-2021 season with a bad Arizona team, so anything can happen, but Phil Kessel is just a few years removed from being an 82-point player, a 92-point player, a 34-goal guy, and he still has a lot left in the tank. He had 8 goals and 44 assists for 52 total points the last season with a bad Arizona squad. And even though the goal scoring really did decline, you still saw that Kessel was an effective player, making things happen for the Arizona Coyotes, who were a bad team. And now, if he goes over to a team like Calgary, that's already pretty stacked and already has improved their team quite a bit since the Gaudreau and Tkachuk departures, I start to get even more scared as a Vancouver Canucks fan myself, because boy oh boy, do I not want the Calgary Flames to go out there and get better, because they're just going to dominate everybody every other game. For the Oilers, the same thing applies here, man. I don't want to see these Alberta teams getting better. I'm a Canucks fan. It was kind of nice, just hinting at the idea of Edmonton getting Phil Kessel because they were already linked to him. But it was interesting because it was like, okay, Calgary is boosting up their system. They're making these big trades. They're making these big signings. Edmonton, in retaliation, is going to go ahead and try to do the same themselves. They're going to try to get Phil Kessel. They're going to try to get Patrick Kane. But now, it's like, hey, Patrick Kane might have to be the only option the Oilers are able to go for, because maybe Phil Kessel is going over to Calgary. Maybe he reunites with Nazem Kadri and becomes part of, I don't know, a top six that includes a pretty stacked amount of players already, but you just have the former Leafs of yesteryears coming out here and doing their thing. Somebody called Dion Phaneuf, somebody called Jonathan Bernier, somebody called... who the heck else was a staple Maple Leaf back in that time frame? I don't know. Tyler Bozak? Like, he could sign a contract too. Who really knows? But talk in the comments either way, all your thoughts. If you're a Calgary Flames fan, what are your ideas on the Flames potentially signing a player like Phil Kessel? Do you think this is something you would like to do? Do you think you would want to try to fit this under the cap? What moves do you think you're going to have to do to make sure that your team is available to go out there and acquire a player like Phil Kessel in free agency? Go over to the cap-friendly page of the Calgary Flames right here, and you see that they have themselves $2.1 million in cap space, which is not a lot. But then again, I mean, if Phil Kessel goes out there and accepts a cheap deal because he's 34 years old, it wouldn't really be the most surprising thing in the world, in my opinion. But either way, stranger things have happened, haven't they? Talk to the comments all your thoughts about Phil Kessel coming over to Calgary. Where do you think he'll fit in with the Lions? Do you want to force him to play with Kadri just because it would be a funny meme? Toronto Maple Leafs fans, let me know your thoughts in the comments about the most memorable moments that you have had with Kessel and Kadri, excuse me, both as members of the Toronto Maple Leafs. It doesn't even have to be an individual play that involved both of them. How about just two separate plays? Was it the Phil goal where he did the thing, or was it the Kadri stealing the puck from McDavid kind of thing? There are a lot of good moments that both of these players had with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the big question at the end of the day, would you want to see them reunite in Calgary? I know for me personally, it's always been very strange for me as a Canucks fan to see my favorite players reunite in Calgary, like Toffoli, Markstrom, Tanev, Levo, Domingue, and all my other Canucks guys that were in the bubble team in 2020. I'll go into Calgary for some reason. But for Toronto fans, is it the same kind of thing? I get it, there's a little bit of a different flavor to Phil Kessel and Kadri than there is to Tanev and Markstrom, but let me know your thoughts in the comments either way, because I definitely want to see where y'all are coming from. So, Kessel to the Oilers, Kessel to the Flames. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 99. And bye.